Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hi, well, this is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I'm here with Allison, who just put on her Invisalign and might sound a little bit funny, although I can't hear it. Right, Allison?
That's right.
Allison has agreed to share this time with you so you can benefit from her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Allison, give me a little background. What was life like before you found it, with food in particular?
Just to sort of sweep over the earlier part of my life, I've always been naturally thin and extremely athletic. I was a runner, I was a dancer and then a runner for many years. And then sort of the first turning point with food happened about, I would say 7 or 8 years ago when I developed arthritis, and especially in my right foot. After crushing my feet for so many years, they rebelled and I couldn't run anymore. I have a very stressful job. I have a wonderful family, but just like everybody else, I have everyday stressors as well, and sort of discovered that food was comforting and kind of an outlet. And I had never thought about it that way. I had never even really thought about food before, which is sort of odd to say. But then it became almost like I was driven to eat in a way that I hadn't been before. And I gained weight, and it was just hard to get out of the cycle. And I came across your book. I read it, I listened to it, I absorbed it, and sort of rejected it and thought, I don't want to have to come up with rules, and that seems very stringent, and I've never had to conform to rules. And I actually talked to my husband about it, who said, well, that's not really true. You conform to rules all the time, and you conform to rules about eating. And so what is it about making rules for yourself that's turning you off? And I think it really was more about a fear of then what do I do? Then when I'm stressed, what do I do? And even that, when I sort of thought through those thoughts, those made no sense anymore either. There are plenty of things to do when you're stressed, and damaging my health, it really shouldn't be one of them. It sort of is nonsensical. I had signed up actually once before for the program and just didn't follow through on it. But this time in January, I was really fed up and had enough and was committed. And when I'm committed, I'm committed. I mean, I did every single lesson, I did every single assignment until I kind of hit a turning point. I want to say maybe a month ago. I still go through my rules every day. I still go through, my big why, but this is kind of who I am. I think a lot of other people on your podcast and in the groups talk about just having a new identity. For me, it's almost like reverting to my older and what feels to me my truer identity as somebody who just kind of enjoys food in a very sort of normal way. And I don't obsess about it anymore. I'm hoping this is how I am forevermore. But I can tell you that I turned a corner and I just don't see ever turning back. It just doesn't appeal to me in any way.
How did that happen? Could you be a little more detailed, if you don't mind? If I could ask about the kinds of rules that you went through. Was it at all of a struggle? How did that happen?
Oh, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. I mean, I came up with my rules. I redid my rules a couple of times. It wasn't so much about the rules, which are good and which I stick to. It was about the refutation. And I became very frustrated with myself because I called in a few times and I had a few refutations all about the weekend. During the week, I have a pretty structured work schedule and I work a lot. So on the weekends is when I have less structure. I'm sure I'm not unique in this regard, but weekends were way more challenging for me. And I did refutation after refutation about it. I think sometimes I just exhaust myself. And I looked at it and it was like, what is really going on here? Why can you not stick to your rules on the weekend? Until I really made myself slow down on the weekends and really made myself look at the refutation. I physically would look at the refutation on my phone that I had emailed to my coach. He's wonderful. Just by the slowing down so that I could hear myself and hear those thoughts and hear the pig. I have another name for my pig, but it's a bad word.
I'm really curious, and Roger can bleep it out if you want. I'm just really curious.
Okay, well, I'm the badass and the pig is the fat ass. So it's badass versus badass.
Okay, I don't think we have to bleep that. That's funny. Okay.
But it really wasn't me. And the more that I would just really allow myself to slow down and listen to it, that's what really helped me. Just like when I said to myself, oh, if I don't overeat, how will I deal with stress? When I really listened to that, it just made no sense. Once I really listened to the messages, they just made no sense. And the more that I did that, the more I didn't even need to do that. And I didn't even need to take that step anymore because it was just all bullshit. So I just sort of moved past it.
You recognize that whatever the pig said was ridiculous at one point. Not the pig, the fat ass said whatever it said was ridiculous. And then you didn't really need the refutations anymore.
Yeah, it became ridiculous. And the pig's only job is to make you binge. That really hit home for me. And I have these goals. This next year is full of sort of big kind of family events after the pandemic and so many things to look forward to. And I have my own personal goals that I'm just never going to reach if I keep listening to those nonsensical fat ass message of it just doesn't matter. You can make up for it. What's the harm? All the stupid stuff. It all matters. It makes me feel terrible. And now that I'm like a month beyond it, I just feel 1,000% better.
That's so fantastic. You're describing a not so unusual course. At some point, people get an inkling that the pig is really lying, that it's ridiculous what they're saying, and they can't quite figure out why. And at that point, they become relentless about tracking down everything the pig is saying, and they start doing regular refutations. They force themselves to slow down and do regular refutations. Slowing down is another word for putting a space between stimulus and response. Mm-hmm. And they start to examine that space and examine the justifications the pig was offering. And suddenly they say, none of this makes any sense. The pig isn't making any sense. And then from that point forward, the moment they recognize anything as being the pig, they don't really have to do the work because they said, I don't know exactly why, but I know this doesn't make any sense. So I'm just not going to listen to it because I know where that goes. And I'm not a person who listens to that kind of ridiculous talk. That makes a lot of sense that it worked for you. Am I describing it correctly, though? Was there any one particular refutation that made all the difference? Or was it just the fact that you kept putting a space between stimulus and response and then finally figured out that this isn't leading anywhere good? There's no reason to listen to it and you just move forward.
It's a little bit of a twist. It was a journey from making that space that you're talking about. That was very, very helpful. Any message is just binge, binge, binge. When we're writing out what the pig says, it's you have no choice but to binge, right?
That's always the end of the squeal. Yeah.
Yeah, I just cut to that. Every squeal is really just go binge. And once you get to that bottom line, like I am not doing that. So go away.
Yes, that's terrific. I remember eventually realizing that every squeal was really just a derivation of because it's going to taste good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know chocolate tastes good. I'm not eating it anymore. I've had enough of it. I know what it tastes like. I'm not binging.
Yep. I ate enough for 3 people in my youth. My chocolate party days are over, and I'm perfectly fine about that. I'm done with that.
Yeah. I read Ken Gillette's book. I don't know if you've ever read his book about.
What about God?
No, I love him. It was about when he lost weight.
I read him one time, but this is really interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. And in his book about losing weight, I forget what it's called. I read it a long time ago, but he talks about that too, where he just realized I've kind of had enough of all of that. I've eaten enough in my lifetime. Now I'm ready to do something else.
Yeah, life is not one big round food party. There are other joyful, pleasurable things in life. And I eat more than 3 people and I suffer more than 3 people. And I don't need to eat more than 10 people to learn my lesson. So it's done. It's over. Allison, what else should I have asked you? Are there any example moments or ways this has impacted your family or anything else you really want to share?
Well, I think I'm just happier, and binging is all about being secretive, right? And once you can get rid of that, you just open up time and space and patience and availability and opportunity in a way that I think I hadn't even anticipated. It's just very, very meaningful for me. And I'm very, very grateful to you.
So glad. It's like you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore while you eat. There's a sense of everything being okay now. When you're binging, it always felt like you had to get the binge food immediately because things are not okay now. I always tell people it's a false activation of the survival system. So it's like you're running around with a fire alarm going off all the time. And it's a very uncomfortable way to live. One of my mantras is I have everything I need right now. It's much more than just stopping you from eating. It puts you into a much calmer, more peaceful way of being. And, I'm no longer running around with a fire alarm going off inside me all the time that says binge, 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 binge.
I think the only other thing I would want to mention is I did try a different program before I started yours, and it was full of a lot of fear and fear of food. To me, I don't know, you would know better than me, but to me, a very close cousin of binge eating is anorexia. It's kind of a similar journey. Yes. And so I love rules. I'm a rule follower. That was why my husband said that to me. You have all kinds of rules. I think in the beginning, if anything, I was too restrictive and not eating enough. And so kind of slowing myself down in that area too. I don't have to lose all the weight today. By the way, I have lost all my weight, but it doesn't have to happen fast. It doesn't have to happen right now. Just get used to not binging. That's it. That's simple.
If you adopt a different way of life, if you pause, if you force yourself to slow down, that pause between stimulus and response, and you stop binging, the weight comes off mostly as a side effect of that. Paradoxically, if you focus on the weight, you can never really get to goal weight and stay there because it becomes the meaning of your life. And if the meaning of your life is to be able to lose weight, then what's the meaning of your life going to be when you don't have any more weight to lose? So slowing down is essential. Slowing down and learning to love yourself before you arrived, learning to love the weight loss journey, learning to love those moments when the fire alarm does go off falsely and you say, oh, this is great. This is an extinction opportunity. I can't kill this craving without having the craving. The only way out is through. And let me pause. This is a great learning opportunity. Yeah, well, you really get it. You really get it. And yes, anorexia is the other side of the coin. It's derived from the same type of thinking. You're consciously and purposely deciding what role you want previously difficult foods to play in your life. You're thinking through those decisions beforehand so you don't have to use willpower when you're in the moment. And you start to relax around food after that because the important decisions have been made and they become kind of automated. And you think less and less about food and more about your life. I think it's a healthier way of being with food than most non-disordered eaters have overall, but I'm going to take a lot of heat for that comment. But
No, I agree. When I sort of wax nostalgic, it's because I grew up with sort of hippie Jewish parents. So we kept kosher, but they were vegetarian. I've maybe had red meat maybe once in my life. So it's akin to that to me. You know what I mean? Like when I'm in a grocery store and there's beef or whatever, I just don't eat that. And that's how I feel about my rules. I just don't eat that. It's not that complicated and it's not that restrictive and it's not that hard.
There you go. Terrific. What would you say to someone who's scared about investing the money or scared about what their spouse is going to say or scared they don't have the time to do the work that's necessary to make this happen? What would you say to those people?
Well, I mean, taking them sort of in reverse order, I would say with the time, it really doesn't take very much time. And if you're worried about the time, you might also be like I was, where you're also rushing through your life and where you really benefit from slowing down for at least a minute to think about your eating and what you're putting in your mouth. And so it's very therapeutic in that way. The money, I can't speak for other people's budgets or finances, but to me, it was well worth it. And when you look at the money that you spend on food or therapy or all kinds of other things, to me, it was a bargain for all of the support that you get. And as far as your significant other, I can only speak to my own situation where my spouse was very supportive. I mean, people are imperfect. Everybody has something. Everybody has some bit of mishigas that they're dealing with. And hopefully your significant other understands that.
It's very funny because I was brought up by a Jewish vegetarian mother also.
Oh, that's funny. There aren't that many of us out there.
I thought it was an interesting point what you made about that if you're someone that's worried that you don't have the time, that you're probably the person that really needs to do this, because when you make food into a practice, same way you make it into a practice like yoga or meditation or pruning a bonsai tree, when you make it into a practice and you stop and you slow down and you think about what you're doing, it really changes the quality of your life, and you'll find that expanding to other areas as well. So I really like that you said that. I will find that people will often obsess about not being able to change until their spouse does. And really, that's a squeal in and of itself. If you love your partner and you want them to be healthy, someone's going to have to go first. Someone's going to have to show the other one that it's possible to opt out of the destructive eating patterns that are so prevalent in our society. And especially if that partner is going to fight it at first. Someone really has to learn how to deal with that kind of pressure and show them that it's possible. Because otherwise, what's probably going to happen is you guys are going to eat yourself into a lower quality of life and possibly into an early grave. And it's very rare that a couple comes to the conclusion that they need to change at the same time. Somebody always goes first. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been married a very long time, and over time, people change in all kinds of ways, and you have to give the other person room to do that.
Yes, exactly. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything? Do you want to share any of your refutations? You want to talk about your coach? You want to talk about which pieces and parts of the program were most helpful, or did we get what we needed to?
I mean, I think you got it. I've sort of fallen off on my emails, but mostly because I don't really need them anymore. But when I was emailing every day and even twice a week, just emailing those refutations, even if they were repetitive, they were really helpful to me.
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. There's an old quote in psychology that says it takes constant repetition to force alien concepts on reluctant minds. And there are hundreds of times during the day when the old neurological pathways are triggered. And so for a little while, you've got to repeat the refutations. For a little while, you've got to repeat the intervention process so that you can intervene, stop that old pathway from firing and redirect that energy towards something more constructive. Your pig will say that's going to go on forever and you can't possibly afford the effort that it's going to take to do this, but really it diminishes pretty quickly, especially for cravings that are very strong and very frequent. Because cravings that are very strong and very frequent present frequent and strong extinction opportunities. Cravings that are weaker or less frequent are actually a little harder to extinguish because they don't happen that often and we need those opportunities. So the worst of the torture is really not what the pig says it's going to be.
And it just gets better. If you just keep at it and keep at that repetition that you're talking about, it really gets better. And it isn't clear in the beginning. It just looks like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to read my rules every day. I still do read my rules every day, but it's only April. It already is just so much easier. To me, once everything was clarified and what that pig was and what the function of the pig was, it just became easier.
Terrific. The refutations will get more condensed and powerful over time. Your food rules, you zero in on the ones that you really need and you figure out how to minimize the set of rules that you really need to focus on. So in the beginning, people might have 6 to 12 rules, and then over time they realize they can kind of combine and condense, and this one they only need for a little while, and then they kind of hover in the 2 to 4 range for years to come. And it doesn't feel like a burden to read them. It kind of feels comforting. Like I got a friend who says they make her feel all tucked in. Mm-hmm. They make her feel tucked in and safe. So, well, okay, Allison, thank you so much for your time and your willingness to share. I really appreciate your time, and I'll see you in the groups, okay?
Thank you so much for everything. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.